As you have joined us online in worship today, your presence has included not only your presence and participation, but your prayers, the gifts of the people of God, and of course, the praises. But included also, we must remember, are our tithes and offerings. We invite you to give and share your gifts with the people of God for ministry here at Woodlawn. You will find here online the address where you can mail your gifts to, and we appreciate your support of Woodlawn's many ministries. God bless you.
Of our worshiping community here at Woodlawn. We continue to focus in this season of Epiphany on the call of Christ in our lives, as we know through the power of the Holy Spirit that we are called to be the people of God. I'm reading from the Gospel according to St. John, the first chapter, beginning with the 43rd verse, these words. The next day, Jesus decided to go to Galilee. He found Philip and said to him, "Follow me." Now Philip was from Bethsaida, the city of Andrew and Peter. Philip found Nathanael and said to him, "We have found him about whom Moses in the law and also the prophets wrote, Jesus, son of Joseph, from Nazareth." Nathanael said to him, "Can anything good come out of Nazareth?" And Philip said to him, "Come and see." When Jesus saw Nathanael coming toward him, he said of him, "Here is truly an Israelite, in whom there is no deceit." Nathanael asked him, "Where did you get to know me?" And Jesus answered, "I saw you under the fig tree before Philip called you." Nathanael replied, "Rabbi, you are the Son of God. You are the King of Israel." Jesus answered, "Do you believe because I told you that I saw you under the fig tree? You will see greater things than these." And he said to him, "Very truly I tell you, you will see heaven open and the angels of God ascending and descending upon the Son of Man." This is the word of life. Thanks be to God. This is a very unlikely meeting. Perhaps the most unlikely of all meetings. Nathanael had really no desire to meet Jesus. He was, in many ways, just being a good friend to his friend. Honestly, this is the one of whom the prophets spoke? Some self-appointed teacher from that backwoods little town called Nazareth? After all, what good ever came out of Nazareth? Well, as it turned out, at least this fellow Jesus had a sense of humor. He quipped right back, "Glad to meet you, Nathanael. An Israelite," he said to Nathanael, "without deceit." That, in a way, may sound like a kind of backhanded compliment. Maybe Jesus was saying he appreciated Nathanael speaking his mind, and he didn't take any offense at that whole comment about what good ever came out of Nazareth. But as we overhear this conversation in the Gospel according to St. John as it is recorded, we have to realize that there is actually a double meaning here. Jesus calling Nathanael an Israelite echoes back to the story of Jacob. You know, Jacob in the Hebrew Scriptures. Jacob, the deceiver. Jacob's ladder. We are climbing Jacob's ladder. Jacob, the deceiver, who was also known as Israel. But this Nathanael, Jesus says, is an Israelite without deceit. Jesus plays that one well. That one in a very positive response, in spite of the fact that Nathanael has asked, what good ever has come out of Nazareth? And so this very unlikely relationship has its start. Nathanael, I'm quite sure, is laughing under his breath, while his mind is also racing ahead. Jesus wasn't there because of the Nazareth comment. How did Jesus know me? Even more, how did Jesus know what I had said? Jesus responds by saying that he had seen Nathanael sitting under that fig tree. But that seeing was not just an ordinary seeing. It's very much what Lillian Hellman records in her memoir, Pentimento. Pentimento is when an artist has painted over their original design or plan, but through the years, through the fading of the paints, the original intention of the artist begins to show through. While the artist repented of their original plan, the Pentimento is that record of what that original plan was. So Philip is right after all. Nathanael is convinced. The traditional phrases come pouring out of Nathanael's mouth then. You are the Son of Man. You are the King of Israel. And Jesus confirms it by responding with yet another reference to that Jacob. This time, Jacob's ladder. He says, the angels will go up and down on the Son of Man. That is, upon his very self. He's referring to, of course, to that experience that Jacob had in Genesis 28, where the heavens came so close to the earth that the inhabitants of both earth and heaven met. And that's exactly what is happening in the person of Jesus Christ. In Jesus, the very realm of God has come that near. Now this seems maybe for us a very unlikely way to begin one's walk with Jesus. But is it any less unlikely than heaven coming down to earth? You see, heaven is where love reigns supremely, where there is room for all God's children at the table, where, in the words of a friend of mine, nothing is broken and no one is missing. That doesn't sound very much like our daily lives, does it? We know what this world is like. All we've got to do is read the morning headlines or turn on the news. And a world seems so different than that realm of God that is God's love. A world of war and strife, of political gridlock, of children who are suffering in the midst of war and famine. Yet, we know that in Jesus, heaven does get a foothold on this earth. And this morning, as we hear of Nathanael, Nathanael is getting a glimpse of that heaven. I like what Jim Wallace, the editor of Sojourners magazine, says. In Jesus, God hits the streets. In the most unexpected places, we will find Jesus this morning. And it won't be just here in this sanctuary. Remember the time in 1955, the place was Montgomery, Alabama. The issue was forced segregation on the buses of that city. Local pastors had gathered at Dexter Avenue Baptist Church, trying to figure out how they could respond. And one little woman named Rosa Parks had recently been arrested for refusing to give up her seat on the bus to a white person. Those who were gathered there that day in Montgomery, Alabama on Dexter Avenue knew that there would be a trial coming soon. There was a lot of back and forth, and nothing clearly emerged until the most unlikely thing. A young preacher new to the town, unknown to the city fathers. This fellow in his 20s raised his hand. His name was Reverend Martin Luther King. He was a newcomer to this gathering, but like Nathaniel, he had glimpsed heaven coming down in Jesus Christ. He had sensed that the reign of God was coming near. And now, as he found himself in that place, he longed for the meeting of heaven and earth. And he wanted to invite others to walk on the street of God where the reign of God would get a foothold. An unexpected place that was on Dexter Avenue in Montgomery, Alabama. Yet as we remember and commemorate Dr. King's birthday this week, we need to remind ourselves of his glimpse of what it was to look when the reign of God came near. He reminded us by saying the time is always right to do right. Martin Luther King helped a whole generation see where the ways of heaven could get a foothold in this world. He helped us remember that walking with Jesus meant to walk not just for us, but for justice. A world where love would reign supreme. A world of God's peace and wholeness, where no one is broken and no one is missing. And where a table like this table is spread out and ready for all of God's children. Oh yes, God has hit the streets today. He's calling us to do the same. And to expand this table beyond the walls of this church, beyond the doors of this church, out into this city, this nation and world, so that heaven will truly come down in our very midst. Karl Barth, the great theologian, is said to have said, when you preach, you've got to have the Bible in one hand and the newspaper in the other. He was right. You see, the call of Nathaniel reminds us that when we walk with Jesus, we walk in the most unexpected places where heaven and earth come near. And in this broken world this morning, we are here, gathered around this table, representing that God's reign of love is already here. And that it's time for us to do something in unexpected places about that very thing. In the name of the Father, and the Son, and the Holy Spirit, let it be so.